Okay, so here is a real paradox. Draganfly is sitting on over $90 million in cold, hard cash to fuel this huge defense drone supercycle, but their core margins just completely evaporated. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. It is March 24th, 2026, and today we are looking at Q4-25 results for Draganfly, ticker DPRO. They build specialized tactical drones. But man, this quarter was a tough read. Revenue down 11.3% quarter over quarter to $1.91 million. Operating expenses surging up to $7.88 million. Mira, what are we even looking at here?
We are looking at a company trying to act like a major military prime contractor while their day-to-day business basically stalls out. And actually, before we dig into the actual wreckage, just a quick reminder that this is purely our personal opinion and not financial advice, so please don't base your trades on our banter. But look, the thing that immediately hit me wasn't even the top-line revenue drop. It was the gross profit. It cratered nearly 80% sequentially.
Right, down to what, roughly $85,000?
Yeah. Just shy of $86,000 on a 4.5% margin. That is a massive structural breakdown.
Which is, it's wild when you consider the actual hardware they are building out in the real world. I was reading through the call transcript, and the CEO was talking about how Arizona border sheriffs normally ride horses or ATVs for 2 hours just to check a tripped camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Draganfly retrofitted this heavy-duty drone with twin diesel engines so it can just hover out there in the dead air for 7 hours at a time. It is incredible hardware. But the market just did not care. The stock was actually up over 5% during the regular session at 633. But the second the earnings bell rang, it tanked, down 15% in the extended hours to 538.
Well, yeah, the tape does not lie there. Investors ran for the exits because you can't fund that kind of advanced hardware research when your overhead is spiraling. Like you said, operating costs jumped over 47%. So that widened their operating loss to $7.79 million for the quarter, or a comprehensive loss of 33 cents a share. And honestly, the part that probably spooked the institutional guys the most was how management explained it.
You mean on the earnings call?
Exactly. It felt like they didn't entirely know which side of their own business was failing.
Oh, wow. Okay, wait. Are you talking about the CFO's comments on the product versus services mix?
Yeah. He got on the mic and flat out blamed the revenue drop on lower product sales. But if you actually run the numbers in their own 10Q, product sales went up. It was their drone services revenue that absolutely fell off a cliff.
Okay, that is exactly the kind of mess we need to unpack. Let's get into the details on that.
Yeah, it is frankly bizarre. So the CFO literally says on the call that the top-line drop was, quote, mainly due to lower product sales. But if you actually pulled the financials, product sales were around $1.8 million in Q4. That is actually higher than the $1.6 million they disclosed in the third quarter.
Right, so the math just flatly contradicts him.
Exactly. The actual bleed was entirely on the services side. Drone service revenues just crashed. They went from roughly $533,000 down to $108,000. That is basically an 80% drop in a single quarter.
Wow, an 80% drop? Do you think he just misread his own spreadsheet, or was he trying to downplay a collapse in a high-margin segment? Because those service contracts usually carry the best margins.
They do, and that is exactly why their gross profit evaporated. When you lose over $400,000 in highly lucrative service revenue, your profitability structure just caves in. Whether he misspoke or tried to gloss over it, I really don't know. But as an analyst, when the spoken narrative completely disconnects from the mathematical reality in the very same paragraph, it really shakes your confidence.
Yeah, it feels like they are sprinting so fast they forgot to look at their own feet, which actually brings me to the balance sheet. They raised a ton of money. They went from 5.4 million shares outstanding all the way to 29 million shares to build this $90 million war chest. What exactly are they funding with all this dilution if the current business is shrinking?
Well, that is the $90 million question.
They're basically running a completely different thermal budget now. They're not trying to be a boutique hardware shop anymore. The CEO made this massive point on the call about a structural shift in global defense, specifically in the Middle East.
You're talking about the mass precision shift?
Right. They realize foreign jurisdictions no longer want to just buy a handful of bespoke American drones. They want to completely own the manufacturing process so their supply chains are protected. I actually pulled a quote from the CEO because it is quite telling. He said, we build 10,000 that work really well. That in itself is an entire manufacturing process, an entire workflow that goes so far beyond putting 10 elegant machines together.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's not about selling the drone itself. It's about selling the factory that builds the swarm.
Exactly. It's a full pivot to software-driven munitions at scale, like the FPV drones, completely reshaping modern war right now. So they're staffing up heavily, burning cash on office costs, salaries, travel. They're banking entirely on this 10-year supercycle. They're basically preheating the oven for massive sovereign contracts.
But until those sovereign contracts actually land, they're just burning very expensive wood.
Very expensive wood, and dilution is the exhaust from that burn. They have the cash runway now, which is great, but they absolutely must transition that capital into steep revenue scaling immediately. You cannot run $7.8 million in quarterly operating expenses against $1.9 million in revenue for very long before the market gives up on you.
Yeah, you can sell the vision of the factory all you want, but eventually someone actually has to buy the product. So where does this leave them heading into the rest of the year, and what should we be watching for next quarter?
Well, they are absolutely banking on execution from here. They didn't give us strict numerical guidance, but management kept repeating this idea of a predetermined revenue ramp heading into the end of the year and 2026. They believe they have laid the infrastructure, and now the demand just clicks in.
Which means we need to watch those major government procurements, like the Canadian Armed Forces. They just did that whole test flying 5 different defense vignettes flawlessly in the middle of a literal ice storm. And I think, Canada is mapping out a $78 billion defense strategy. Converting those freezing flights into actual contracts is going to be everything.
It is everything. Because if you prove you can operate in those conditions, the market opens up. Actually, there is a wild card here to watch next quarter. With that $90 million in cash, the CEO explicitly warned they have a number of acquisitions in the pipeline.
Wait, acquisitions? So instead of just scaling to profitability organically, they might go shopping?
Yeah, you don't raise, or at least you shouldn't raise, that kind of cash just to pay rent. If they want to build mass precision facilities quickly, they probably need to buy components of that supply chain. But, and this is the kicker for me, the CEO actually told investors on the call, quote, "We are an employee first, customer second, shareholder third organization."
Oh, wow. Wall Street historically does not love being told they are third in line, Miro, especially when you just diluted the stock from 5 million to 29 million shares in 1 year.
Right. It is a nice sentiment, but it is a luxury you can't really afford when your margins just collapsed. They are betting everything on this 10-year autonomy supercycle. They have the war chest, but the market is going to demand a return on that dilution very soon.
Yeah, they basically traded a comfortable runway for a massive rocket engine. Now they just have to prove they can steer it before the fuel runs out.
Let's just hope they actually built a steering wheel.
If you want these earnings breakdowns to just show up in your feed, go ahead and follow the podcast. We actually build the show using AI to generate the scripts and our voices, which is really how we can turn those dense 100-page filings into audio so fast. We would love your feedback or ticker requests, so just email us at earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or find us on X through the show notes link. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
See you next time.